Hi, welcome to another weekly session. And in today's session, we'll be discussing how to understand what exactly is Bayesian neural networks, then how to perform function transformers, and if time permits, we'll also discuss about super. Super is a Python method which is quite popularly used and it's worthwhile discussing. So, hey there, hope you're doing great. And before we begin, ensure that you do hit the subscribe button down there so as to appreciate my efforts. Alright, let's get started. So this is what I could find on Bayesian neural networks. The implementation part is something which is interesting and we'll take up that in a future video. But let's discuss what exactly is Bayesian neural network and why you should understand Bayesian neural network, what exactly it tries to deliver and those kind of things. So Bayesian neural network refers to the extending the standard neural networks with posterior inference in order to control the overfitting from a broader perspective. Approach is statistical methodology. This model parameters in programming languages. Variables can take specific value, which will return the same result every time you can access the specific variable. So this is what they're talking about, a simple linear model. In comparison, the Bayesian world, you will have similar entities known as random variables, which will give you a different value every time you access it. Okay. In Bayesian terms, the historical data represents our prior knowledge. All right. Let's assume x is a random variable which represents a normal distribution. Every time x gets accessed, the return value would be different. This process of getting new value from the random variable is called sampling. What comes out depends on the random variables associated with the probability distribution. That means in this parameter space, one can deduce the nature and shape of the network's learned parameters. Recently, there's been a lot of activity in this area and this. Advantages are useful in solving problems in domains where the data is scarce and a way to prevent overfitting. Molecular biology, medical diagnosis are universally useful, can obtain better results for a vast number of tasks where they are extremely difficult to scale to large problems. Allow you to automatically calculate error associated with your predictions when dealing with data of unknown targets. Allow you to estimate uncertainty in predictions. Why should you use Bayesian neural networks instead of taking into account a single answer to one question? Bayesian methods allow you to consider an entire distribution of answers. So what we can infer out of this particular article is that the standard methods for any standard model, you have the set of inputs and the corresponding weights matrix, and you get the output. Input, weight matrix, and the computation happens, you get the output. But what about Bayesian neural networks? Every time you pick up the input and perform and pass it through the Bayesian network, the output would be different. Why? Because it depends on the prior knowledge, and so whatever happens in the Bayesian theory, what Bayesian theory is ultimately about prior knowledge, the sampling methods, and those kind of things. So say, since we have sampling methods, so every time the new random variable would be generated, and since the new random variable is generated, the outcome or the probability distribution which is delivered is different for each run. How is it helpful? That is what they are trying to say. You are not overfitting every time a new sample is generated. Universal, helpful, and can help you to scale to a larger problem. So Bayesian methods, we started machine learning with naive Bayes. Then, although it gained a huge popularity, only in theoretical perspective, right? In theory, you talk about naive Bayes, other things, but actually, you never ever implement naive Bayes as a one of the most. It's never ever implemented in the machine learning model. Yes, it is implemented in SPAM or HAM, those kind of things, but it's the least discussed thing. However, it was the one of the most brilliant and the starting point of the machine learning world. And I think here we are again starting off with Bayesian neural networks. We are about to discuss probabilistic models, and this is what the probabilistic model is about, Bayesian neural networks. Now let us move on to another article. This also I found some quite a bit interesting. This one, implementation probabilistic models, PNN. I think we will discuss this implementation in one of our future discussions. So not now. Let's keep it for some time later. Now let's discuss about what is Bayesian neural networks by this KD Nuggets paper or article. extends the standard neural networks with posterior inference. This is what we learned before as well. For many reasons, this is unsatisfactory. One reason is that it lacks proper theoretical justification. Probabilistic perspective, why maximum likelihood? Why just point estimates? Using MLE ignores any uncertainty that we have in proper weight values. From a practical standpoint, this type of training also susceptible to overfitting, as neural networks often do. One partial fix for this is to introduce regularization. From a Bayesian perspective, this is equivalent to introducing priors. Again, from a probabilistic perspective, this is not the right thing to do. The correct thing is to do posterior inference. All right. Though this is very challenging from both modeling and computational point of view, Bayesian neural networks that take this approach. Okay, so this is what they're talking about, the normal standard neural network, which is these are the drawbacks of standard neural networks. This is what we are having unsatisfactory. We use MLE, maximum likelihood, and those kind of things. We also use regularization, but those kind of things are not the best way to deal with the problems in a probabilistic approach. So that's why we are talking about this. The correct thing to do is posterior inference, though this is very challenging from both modeling and computational point of view. BNNs are networks that take this approach. In this past ways, this was all impossible and is taught to poor approximation using Laplace methods. However, lately there have been super interesting results using variational inference, and this has sparked a great deal of interest in this area. BNNs are important in specific settings, specifically when we care about uncertainty very much. Good enough, I think. Yeah, we got an understanding what BNNs are, how they're overcoming the probabilistic drawbacks of the standard neural networks. The standard neural networks have a lot of probabilistic drawbacks, and this is what BNNs are trying to do. This is what we are able to understand. So first thing they are trying to do is they're extending the standard neural networks with a posterior inference. That's the first and foremost thing. Working is similar on the Bayesian theory. The random variable x is different for everyone, so every run is different, has a different outcome. Reason being, you're sampling from a probability distribution. A sample is always a different thing until and unless you're seeding. Coming to the next point, it is able to work. It is able to scale to a large network. So even if on large problem domain, it is able to scale up quite well, which is usually a drawback of neural networks. Overfitting is regularized without any additional regularization parameters and those kind of things. It is automatically taken care of by the Bayesian neural network. So this is a extremely new concept. I did read about it, but I wanted to explore this with you people, with you folks, and this is what I do always. Next up would be how to discuss the implementation part. If time permits, we can discuss implementation today itself. If it doesn't permit, we might always take up in any other weekly session on anything else. Yeah. So let's search if we can get anything more. Bayesian neural network versus standard neural network. So what is the difference between Bayesian network and Bayesian neural network? Wow. This is cool enough. Classical neural networks use maximum likelihood to determine, this is what we read, to determine the network parameters, the weights and biases, and hence make predictions. Bayesian neural networks marginalize over the distribution of parameters in order to make predictions. So the Bayesian approach allows different models to be compared. Bayesian network is a graphical model that encodes probabilistic relationships between the variables of interest amongst the variable of interest, and the model takes prior knowledge and data and lets you estimate the posterior probabilities of outcomes. That is the Bayesian. This is the prediction part is entirely the Bayesian theory based, and the working is how the Bayesian theory works. You take in the probabilistic relationship between all the variables of interest, taking the prior data, and find the relationship between all the variables of interest. That is what we try to do. No. This is another question of interest. I'll try to answer this question from very basic so that everyone from a non-computer science background also gets something out of this. Read. Classification is the process of categorizing function, and there are a lot of classifiers. This is what neural network is. This is what Bayesian neural networks is. So this is, I think, this is cold. So you are able to get a Bayesian neural networks visit Asia A probability this. Wow. So both use as directed graph, can also be used as classifier algorithms. Differences in Bayesian networks: the visual representation of graph is vertices and edges having meaning. The network itself gives you the valuable information about conditional dependence between the variables. This with neural networks, yeah. So neural networks, the structure is meaningless. Over here, the structure is everything, just like decision trees. And the Bayesian networks represent independence relationships between the variables. Thus, the links represent conditional relationships in probabilistic sense. Neural networks, generally speaking, have no such direct interpretation. Bayesian neural networks are simple in comparison to networks. A potential reason to pick ANN over BNN is possibility you mentioned correlations between the input variables. Bayesian networks like naive Bayes assume that all input variables are independent. If an assumption is not correct, it can impact the accuracy of NB classifier. ANN with appropriate network architecture can handle the correlation. And that is one advantage, definitely. I think there's a lot more to explore and explain about Bayesian neural networks, but till then, let's wrap it up over here and we can move on to our next topic, which is function transformers. So let us resume our discussion with what are function transformers. It is something which is used for user-defined operations. So let's say you are dealing with your data set and you are quite well versed with what transformers are, right? So what transformers are, you have column transformer, those kind of transformers in which you are able to mention what kind of transformation you want to apply, right? So you pick up, let's say you want mean imputation and those kind of predefined function transformers, but predefined transformations on specific rows. But let's say you have a very user-defined demand for your use case. You want to apply something which is quite custom and fits your use case. What would you do in that particular situation? You would be using function transformer. So this is something like you define a function and pass it, use a apply function over it, rather than using apply function over all the columns separately. Let function transformer, let us do it in a transformer style, in a better sklearn language, in a better sklearn manner. So that's what function transformer is on a very brief and superficial overview. That's what it is. So let's get started with function transformer. This is what an example of function transformer is, and we'll start with this particular example only. So let's say we have import numpy as np from sklearn dot preprocessing import function transformer. Good enough? Now you have transformer defined, which is the function transformer. You define the function transformer, get the array. Let's say this was your data set, right? What happened? Log. So you define your transformer, you get the data set, and then you apply transformer.transform. Seems good enough, easy to understand. And let's see where it is used. Some examples. Let's say this is one example we can check out where is function transformer being used. So this is another sophisticated example wherein we are using function transformers. Function transformer is used in a pipeline. So you're in pipeline, you first applying the function transformer, then you get one hot, and finally the logistic regression. This is one beautiful example of using function transformer. Let's check out few more. Uh, 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 uh. So yeah, this one particular widely used in NLP classification. So you have a lot of data NLPs, which is usually the transformation in NLP is in lot many cases it is dataset specific. Pre-processing is dataset specific. So you have defined one function transformer, and this is what the transformation is handled. This is how the transformation is handled, and so the benefit of using a transformer rather than simply applying a function over there. So benefit of using I don't find here any. Is the electric transformers we are getting the search. So let's see what it is. So why would you use a transformer rather than a function, right? You have why the very same reason we use transformer. Let's say we have other kind of transformers, right? We have in transformers we can do min-max scaling, standard scaler, those kind of things which can be normally applied. But why would you use a pipeline to make the code clean, pretty, and easy debugging? So that's why you can also use for the very same reason you can use function transformers. That's what so for every reason you use a transformer, any other transformer in the pipelines is the very same reason you would use a function transformer, and that is what this is all about. I think we did also see, let's say our transformation was bit custom defined. Let's say what we do a custom function over here, wherein it takes the value x and it returns the square and is square root, the sum of the square and the square root. That's what it would define. And now this time what the transformer would be, the transformer would be equal to function transformer, wherein I pass in the custom function. Now I obtain the new results, and this is what we expect it to happen. Good enough. I think this is more than sufficient to explain what it is. So let's say you want to make pipeline. So what you do is pipeline. You first have whatever the position of the transformation you want to do. Let's say you want a custom function transformer, which is the transformer, and the other transformations. As simple as that. That's what it is about. This is what function transformer is about, and I think it is quite interesting in itself. I was looking up for some articles, but I didn't actually find any good article, although this clearly explains what it is. So this one is pretty interesting, this particular article, using function transformer to predict the ratings, and this is like function transformer. So this is what they are trying to do. Lambda x and x numeric validate equal to false. It's very simple, those kind of things. Function transformer, this is one function, extract your word count, category, encode. So let's say you want to add customizations and you want to have your code clean, you want to pass it across multiple variables. This is what you're going to do, rather than defining a function and applying it over the columns one by one. This is using a pipeline approach always helps, better debugging, cleaner code, faster. And so whatever the advantage of pipelining is, so if you are comfortable with pipelining, this is what you want to do. If you are comfortable with pipelining but you want to use custom functions, yeah, this is the right way to put it up. If you are too used to pipelining and you want to use a custom function, how would you do? This is how you would do. You would make use of a function transformer. That's what you would do. That's the best way to put it forward, and I think that more than justifies what we are trying to do. I think you also got the hang of it. This is what we are trying to do. Get the function, define your custom function. Let's say this is what the custom function is. And so these are the different function transformers. Now what happens over here is you define a pipeline. So pipeline is this. First I would do reset index, then I would do get here, then I would do get word count, then I would do this, and finally the model would be generated. This is what a pipeline would look like. Good enough? So let's say this is what it is. Here would get the pipeline. So this is what the pipeline would look like. Ignore the extra parameters. So steps, first step is resetting index. You define some functions that would reset the index. You define the how to get the word, years, what you want to do. Let's say you assume a hypothetic data set that is existing in a current session. So you would like to remove the IDs, or you would like to remove the redundant features. Remove redundant, and here you define a function, remove redundant. That's what it is. Extremely simple to understand, and this is the pipeline that is going to be defined. This is what we are about. This is what function transformers is. Very simple to understand. Every advantage you have in transformers is what you have in function transformers. Let's move on to super. Hi, so this would be the last topic of the day, and we'll be discussing what is super in Python. And this is the heart of Python programming language. Super, if you have not discussed about super in object-oriented programming, I don't think you have discussed anything worth discussing in object-oriented programming. So this is the core essence of object-oriented programming. What exactly is super, why it is used, why it's so popular, and if you're into deep learning, I can guarantee if you're into machine learning and deep learning, this is something you would use quite often, quite regularly, and it's essential for you to understand what exactly is super, what role it plays, why should you learn about super, and how does it help. So before we start referring to any other examples, we will discuss our very own examples. So this is what it is. So let's say you have a class, person. Every class, every object of the type person, don't visualize it as a class, visualize it as if an object. So let's say you are a person. If you are a person, you must have a first name, you must have a last name. These are inherent properties which get defined the moment I say that you are a person. If you are a person, you have a first name, you have a last name. So these are the inherent properties which are defined the moment the instance of a person is defined or a constructor is called. Now, if you want to know the full name, what would be needed? You would need to concatenate the first name and the last name. As simple as that. Now, let's say there's a student. Student has one more added attribute, that is the grade. There's the grade of the student. And the grade of the student is another attribute that gets defined the moment you're defining a person as a student. Every student is a person, so that's why we are inheriting student from person. And then you have first name, last name, and grade. Over here, do I really need to redefine first name, last name, and grade? No, I don't need to redefine first name, last name, and grade. What I can do is I can have the super over here, I can have super over here, and in it the first name, last name. How does it help? It calls the soup. I need not to specifically mention person over here. I need not to specifically mention person over here and call the init. Rather, I can ask it to call the super just above it. And it would redefine the first name and the last name, and it would become the parameters of student as well. So while defining object A, B, and 10, 10 as the, let's say, 10th grade, the student is in class 10. First name is A, second name is B. So the moment I do this, self.grade is defined. Good enough. So what we did over here, grade is defined as 10. After that, init is called, first name and last name were defined. Now while calling the details, what happens is first the full name is called. The full name is this. After that, the grade is defined. So these are the details. That's what is very simple. Now let's understand what super is. So super, what exactly super is? Super is in Python makes class inheritance more manageable and extensible. The function creates a temporary object that allows to reference to the parent class by the keyword super, and super function has two major use cases to avoid the uses of parent class explicitly. So what we could have done over here is, let's say I do person and person, this is equally valid. Let me check through this, how to get the super. Let's check on this. Yeah, this is the question we're looking for. I see everywhere see superclass methods being called by super, the superclass, and the instance and methods. So what about calling the superclass directly in the method? So here's the examples. They are saying that, let's say there's an object A running A init, super A self init. Two typical uses of super in class hierarchy with single inheritance. Super can be used to refer the parent class without naming them explicitly, thus making the code more maintainable. This, okay, makes the code maintainable. If you wish to add changes to the parent class or anything, it would always refer to the parent class. So no matter what, maintenance for always. Okay, so it makes a generic call. Rather than defining the class name, you're defining the whatever you're inheriting from. No matter where you are inheriting from, it will just call the parent class. So if you mention the particular class name, let's say person dot, let's say you're doing this person dot full name, right? Person dot full name. What's the disadvantage over there? Disadvantage is, let's say you wish not to change the parent class over here. So you would like to reflect the automatic changes over here as well, rather than going everywhere and making the changes from person. Let's say it's man. So from changing to person, from changing every instance of person to man, it's a better way to use super. That's a one added advantage. That's a clear advantage we have over here. Apart from it, this is closely parallel the use of super in another programming. Second use is to support cooperative multiple inheritance in dynamic execution environment. This use case is unique to Python and is not found in statically compiled languages. So diamond diagrams with the help of multiple base classes implement the same method. Good design dictates that this method have the same calling signature in every case. Okay. So how are you making a diamond? So let's say A is the starting point, B inherit A, C inherit A, and D inherits both B and C. Wow. So when I call D, the first line should be running D init, then yes, then it should be super of D, which is B and C. First B would be called, then C would be called, I think. Yes. So when B is called running B, then A is called running A. And finally C would be, this is bad because C's init is skipped, and reason for that is B's init calls A directly. The purpose of super is to resolve the inheritance diamonds. If you uncomment this and comment down this, okay. So here we did not use super, rather we were using init, and the reason we are using init is the reason we were stuck over here and no further call were made and C was skipped out. Had we used super, we would have this. First D is running, then first D would run, then B would be called. Super B is A, but that solves the diamond issue as well. So how is this solved? Super B self actually calls C self. B knows nothing about C, yet B super calls C init. The reason is self.class.mro calls C. In other words, self knows about C. That's all it is. Now super has pitfalls. It takes a considerable level of coordination between all the classes in the inheritance diagram. Furthermore, you must be consistent about using super everywhere. Skip it once and you repeat the entire purpose of super. Wow. So that's one beautiful thread I would like to share. I'll add in the notebook. Now let's see single inheritance. This is what we just saw, single inheritance. Now let's see multiple inheritance using super. So in multiple inheritance, we are starting with, the example is starting with animal name, then animal is mammal inherits animal, the mammal name, then the animal name is a mammal, so it would be that this is a mammal, this is an animal, cannot fly mammal or cannot swim. Then a cat would be there. Wow. Let's see what it is. So let's see what should be the expected output. You're calling cat, right? Calling cat is calling the constructor, I'm a cat. Should be the first line. I'm a cat, good. Now the super method with the argument as cat. Super method first goes to cannot swim with the argument as cat. So mammal that cannot swim, cat cannot swim, should be the second line, good enough. Now this goes to mammal that can't swim. Mammal can't swim, and we printed that. Now this goes to this super, whereas the mammal, but its super knows about cannot fly, and that's why directly without skipping this, where is the diamond structure, it would first call this. So it would be cat cannot fly, as we saw in the thread. So it would be cat cannot fly. Next statement would be the combined super of these two things, which is the mammal one. It would be cat is a mammal and then cat is an animal. Method resolution order, which outlines the method in which inherited. So you are defining the method resolution order, cannot swim and cannot fly. So defining the method resolution order and using super is what ensures that you're not skipping over cannot fly and directly jumping over mammal, but you're attending all the participants of the inheritance sequentially and attending them one by one. And that's why first is cat cannot swim and then cat cannot fly. That's what it is. I think by now we have understood, briefly we have got a fair understanding of what super is. So we have rectangle, we have square, length, width, area, perimeter, length, area perimeter. So how can we use super to simplify the square? So rectangle square is a special case of rectangle wherein the length and width is the same, else everything is good enough. So you do define rectangle, and for square in the init you're defining length and length. So how does it help? So how does it help? Since it is inheriting, it has access to those things, area and perimeter methods of the rectangle, and you have done the initialization part. You have done the initialization part using the rectangle and defined length and length. So width would be replaced with length. So self dot length is equal to length, and self dot width would be equal to length behind the scenes. And behind the scenes, you are able to calculate area by self dot length into self dot length, which is giving the area. So you need not to redefine and do the mundane task again and again. Rather, use a super thing. That's the beauty of it. And what can super do for you? So what can super do for you using inheritance? Like in other object-oriented languages, it allows you to call the methods of the superclass in your subclass. The primary use of this is to extend the functionality of the inherited method. And in this example, we show you that you'll create a class cube that inherits from square and extends the functionality of area. So let's say now you are about to describe cube. What is cube? Cube has surface area and it has volume. So it inherits square. Surface area would be equal to the area of the square multiplied by 6. 4 area up and down. So super area and get the value and multiply it by 6. Volume would be the area multiplied by length. Wow. So we have not defined init over here, we have not defined the length over here, but it is still able to access because of the inheritance. So this is the beauty of it. And I think the code examples which are provided are extremely genius and brilliant. So let's do a deep dive. Before heading into multiple inheritance, let's do a quick detour into the mechanics of super without any parameters. Can also take 2 parameters. First is the subclass, second parameter is an object instance. So first is the subclass, from which one do you want to do super, and other is the second parameter is the instance of that subclass. Super square self is equivalent to calling the parameterless super call. The first parameter refers to the subclass square, while the second parameter refers to the square object, which in this case is the self. You can call super with other classes as well. So over here we see super square self, super square self. So here we are not calling the super of cube. Rather, we are calling the super of square and getting the area. Yes, in this example, you are setting the square as subclass to the super instead of cube. This causes super to start searching for matching method at one level above the square instance. In this example, the behavior doesn't change, but imagine that square also implemented an area function that you wanted to make sure cube did not use. Calling super would allow us to do that. What is it? In specific example, the behavior does not change, but imagine that square also implemented an area function that you wanted to make sure cube did not use. Calling super in this way would allow you to do so. What about the second parameter? Remember, there is an object that is the instance. Use, for example, is instance this must return true. By including instantiated super returns a bound method, a method that is bound to the object, which gives the method to the object's context, such as any instance attributes. Is this parameter not included? This method returned is just a function. For this is technically does not return a method, just a proxy object. Super in multiple inheritance. This we just saw, I think we just saw this. Method resolution order. We saw this. We saw this. So, I think it's a bit more comprehensive. Yeah, this is simple, this is simple, this is simple. This is also, I think, how to guide what is Python super, inherit it from init, add a new value to the class, inherit methods. This is pretty basic. This we have already discussed. This also we have already discussed. I think this part is remaining. We can get it done as early as possible. So this part is multiple inheritance overview. This is another use case of super really shines, and this one isn't as common as a single inheritance scenario. In addition to the single inheritance, Python supports multiple inheritance. Good enough. We have discussed this. Let's go through the code examples. The more code examples you see, the more proficient you become, the more comfortable you get, and it's always an advantage. So let's say you have a class triangle and you have a class right pyramid. In the class triangle, let's say def init, these are the things, and you return the area. For the right pyramid, you would need a base and the slant height to calculate the area. So using the super, you are getting the area, you are fetching the perimeter. So you just defined triangle and a square. Right pyramid is a combination of triangles and square base and triangles adjusted. So what it does is inherits triangle and square. Triangle we just defined. Now using this super area, it would get the area of triangle and not of the square. It would get the area of, wow, this is confusing, right? It can also get the area of square. Why not? It can get the area of the square. Now let's see how it is. Area method that uses super is just like single inheritance with the aim of reaching the parameter, and area methods defined all the way up in the rectangle classes. So these are calculated for the rectangle classes for the rectangular area, so the square area and the square perimeter. But what about the triangle? We can also, how about accessing the triangle's area? Yeah, so that is what it is. The problem though is both superclasses, triangle and square, define an area. To take a second and think what might happen when you call area on the right pyramid, like you're calling now. So for this, did you guess the Python will try to call triangle area? This is because something called the method resolution order. Did we notice that triangle area was called and not, as we hoped, square dot area? If you think the last line of the trace back, this, you may recognize this from geometry formula is the area of the triangle. Otherwise, you like me might have scrolled up to the triangle and rectangle definitions as seen the same code in triangle.area. So method resolution order tells Python to search for inherited methods. This comes in handy when you're using super, because MRO tells you exactly where Python will look for a method when you're calling super. Every class has an MRO attribute that allows us to inspect the order of call. So when you do the object.mro, you get to know the order. So right pyramid is first, the object itself, right pyramid, then it inherits triangles, then square, which is then inherited from rectangle. This tells us the method will be searched first in right pyramid, then in triangle, then in square, then in rectangle, and nothing, the object found, then object from all classes originate. The problem here is the interpreter is searching from area in the triangle, and before square and rectangle, upon finding area in triangle, calls it instead of the one you want. Okay, so what happens over here is it would call the first, it would find area in triangle and it would call this, which is wrong, and it would call error, give error. That is why what we need to do is, because triangle.area expects to be a height and a base attribute, Python throws an attribute error. Some control over how the MRO is constructed, just by changing the signature of, you will be able to get it correctly. So first you inherit square, then triangle, and the code would run successfully. For the sake of simplicity, I did a few things wrong. First, and arguably most, was that I had two separate classes with the same method and signature. This causes issues with the method resolution because of the first instance of area that has been encountered. When you are using super with multiple inheritors, it's imperative to design your classes to cooperate, and part of this is ensuring that your methods are unique and they get resolved in MRO by making sure method signatures are unique, are these and these. So in this case, to avoid complete overhaul of your code, you can rename triangles class to this. This would ensure no clashing. Our next issue is that code does not have a delegated triangle object like this for square object. So calling area2 gives an attributed error. So okay. I think you can go through this, you have got the hang of it, and then comes this alternative composition and mixing. This is something we won't discuss over here. We can get to it at a later discussion. We'll keep it for any future discussion, what is composing and what is mixing. But I think we have got a brief overview of what super is, how to use it for your benefit, and understand why it is widely used in deep learning and other things. Hope it was quite helpful, and if it was, please appreciate the hard work and the contribution of my contribution by subscribing down to my YouTube channel and spread the word among